Hello and welcome again to the Made for More podcast. I've got a super exciting guest with me today. I've got Amber Renee. So welcome, Amber. Thank you so much for your time today. Before we get too far into it, let's start with where did you come from and where are you going?
Thanks so much for having me, Ali. I'm excited to connect with your audience here. I really appreciate it. So my background is probably where most of your audience is. I started in pretty heavy corporate background. I was a civil engineer. Well, I still am a civil engineer. I started out my career working on a construction site building roads and bridges. So this saw me in hot pink steel cap boots. My nickname was Pinky, and I worked for one of the biggest construction companies here in Australia on one of the biggest developments in Queensland. So there's a road in Queensland with my name on it. I put my name in the concrete pavement when I built it, and I built some rock retaining walls and a couple of other really fun projects. So it was great fun working, playing in the dirt with the boys. But I'm guessing, like a lot of your audience, I knew it wasn't my passion. So I knew that, I was really good at it. I was very good at maths. I was really good at science. It was easy for me to study engineering. And I didn't mind the job, but it wasn't it wasn't my passion. It wasn't what lit me up. And also I knew that it wasn't my succession. I didn't want to become a 50-year-old engineer, because I looked at those people that were in those positions, and they weren't me. I was never going to be an overweight, angry old man. That was just nothing about me was ever going to be that person. So I was like, well, it's not going to work out for me here. I need to go and follow my dreams. So I quit that job. That's the first job I quit. I've been fired from every job since then, but I did quit that one. That job, following that, I started my very first fashion label. So that label started with me on a sewing machine. I made 4 shirts the first week and sold 4 shirts, and made 8 shirts and sold 8 shirts the next week. And then 5 years later, we had 120 accounts around Australia. We exported to Paris, Tokyo, LA, and South Africa. I did runway shows all around the world, and we dressed some of the biggest celebrities of the day, which back in the day was Paris Hilton. And it used to be cool to dress Paris, although I feel like she's making a comeback at this point. This was all before the internet. So for anyone who's thinking that they were running, having a hard time getting their name out there these days, running a business or, in the corporate, for me to make sales back then, I used to have to pick up the yellow pages. You would remember that, Ali.
I do remember the yellow pages, yeah.
And pick up my landline, and then I would cold call boutiques and ask boutiques if I could post them out a catalog. So that's how I used to do business. And so to get that kind of success and to dress Paris Hilton before all that happened was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
That was my very first business, and that business was all that I'd ever dreamed of doing ever since I was a kid. That was my absolute passion in life. When I got into it, it wasn't as fulfilling as you would imagine, because you're only designing for 2 weeks of the year, and for the other 50 weeks of the year, you're manufacturing. So manufacturing isn't really sexy, it's not a fun job. So, I love that business, and I was never willing to give it up. However, the universe had other plans for me. So we had just prepaid everything for our latest collection, the next run that we were doing. And we bought all the fabrics and the patterns and prepaid the manufacturer. That manufacturer went out of business, which caused me to go out of business.
Oh, no.
Then found myself at, how old was I? Early 20s. I was bankrupt. I had found out that I'd worked myself to death. So I had cancer. I was hospitalized.
Oh my goodness.
Breakdown. I had stomach ulcers, and I was on anti-anxiety and antidepressant tablets.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. This was when I was, I think I was about 25 at this point. So that was my first foray into entrepreneurship. And I swore then and there that I would never, ever, ever be an entrepreneur again. I was going to go back to a day job. So I did. I got myself a cushy little day job in the city, and I got to put my suit on every day, and I showed up every day, and I got a paycheck every single week, which was wild to me at this point. And that lasted about a year, and then I got fired because I'm a terrible employee and didn't want to be there. I started my second business, which was a fashion styling business. That started with me waking up one day, changing my email signature from designer to stylist, and the rest out from there. So I had no network, no contacts, no clue, and just kind of, hustled, which is not a word that I like to use, but I did just kind of hustle my way into figuring it out. So 3 years after starting that business, I had 2 of the best contracts in the country. I was the fashion editor at Women's Health and Fitness magazine and the resident stylist at Southern Cross Austereo, which at the time was our biggest radio and TV network. So again, I say and I had just done Project Runway. So I'm sure there are some mums of yours in your audience that are Project Runway fans. I just was a designer on there.
Wow.
And following that, I got a TV presenter's role as the fashion reporter for Fashion TV, which was my dream gig. So I thought that I was living my best #fashion life. And, you couldn't get anything more glamorous than interviewing celebrities and going to VIP parties and dressing, stars for the Cannes red carpet. So I literally thought it was a dream. And again, the universe had other plans for me. So again, the universe came along and lovingly pushed me out of all of those contracts. The effects of the global financial crisis finally hit Australia, and all monies for things like TV presenters and stylists had dried up. So I found myself again unemployed and unemployable. So I tried to get a job. I could not get any work. There are not a lot of fashion jobs in the country as it is, but no one was employing anyone in fashion at that point. I tried to go back to my engineering job. They wouldn't even give me a job. I tried to get back on a construction site, could not get work to save myself. All that I had left was this knowledge. And this might be relevant to the current situation that a lot of people are finding themselves in.
Yeah.
You're finding that you have worked this whole career and you've got this whole knowledge and wisdom, or even just life experiences, of this past 5, 10, 20 years, whatever it is. And you're finding that with the current global crisis, you are being pushed out of your current situation. I want to let you know what that looked like for me, because that's what happened to me. I was pushed out of that. All that I had left was a really solid understanding of how to build a fashion styling business. I was very good at it. So what I did was I sat down one day, I got out my iPhone and I recorded an e-course on how to be
just on your iPhone. How good's that?
Without knowing anything. This was in 2015. E-courses weren't a thing back then. It was just like, my brother said you should do it. I was like, cool, I'll do it. And I just started basically giving it away for $9, like it wasn't, I didn't know that this was a business. I certainly didn't have any clue how to turn it into a business. It was just something that I was passionate about. And I just started doing, because I didn't have a job. I had nothing else left. So I just started teaching what I knew.
Yeah.
And then that business now, I'm in my 4th year, I now have 4 6-figure e-courses. So that fashion styling e-course still makes money every single day. I've since gone on to create a personal branding and publicity e-course, which teaches you how to be the face of your brand, how to get publicity, how to become a thought leader in your field, which I know a lot of your people would be interested in being that person in their industry.
Yeah.
I also have a mindset course, which I'm super passionate about, having been through some pretty difficult situations in business. And I've also got my most recent course, which is a how to build an e-course business course. So it teaches you e-courses and funnels and how to live this sort of freedom-based lifestyle. So if anyone's out there that's thinking, I don't know what to do next, the crisis has caused me to question what my next step is, just think back to this story, because I would never have chosen any of these businesses that I started. If I had my own way, I would still be running a fashion label today, and I'd be hating life. I would hate it. It's not something that I would be still passionate about. This is the first business where I feel like I'm fully lit up. I'm really using my engineering brain, because it's a really hard business, this one.
Yeah.
As much as my creativity. And it's the first time that I really feel like I'm on purpose and living in service, and I would never have chosen it. There is no part of me was sitting around going, gee, I wish I could be a digital nomad and work on my laptop. No, I was never thinking that, but the universe had greater plans for me. So just keep that in mind if the universe is pushing you out of something right now.
And I think that's a beautiful lesson as well, is we sort of get caught up in this trajectory, whether it's a career trajectory or life trajectory, and it takes a real shake-up, which is what we're experiencing right now. And I hate to use the word pivot, but I will, we're using this time now to redirect and start focusing on what it is. And it's usually not until we're back against the wall that we start to go, okay, right, those options are no longer viable. What do I have available to me, and what resources do I have? And I love that you mentioned earlier about, what I've got is this knowledge. And with a lot of the leaders that I speak to, is they get into this perhaps new industry, new workplace, new organization, and they forget about all of the years of experience that they've learned beforehand because it's not exactly relevant for where they are right now. So really being able to recognize where your past learnings are to be able to take you into your future is incredible. What I'd love to talk to you about a little bit more is around this personal branding. So personal branding, of course, for entrepreneurs is super important in this day and age with social media. But what about for leaders and our corporate audience? What do they need to be thinking about in terms of their own leadership personal branding?
So I have one of the courses that a partnership with my good friend Inika. She teaches a career development course, and we've got a part of that course is a personal branding aspect, and she's got some really alarming statistics around women in leadership in the current market. And so there's some stats that say you're much more likely to have a CEO named John than you are to have a female CEO. And
Yep.
she tells so many stories around how women will only apply for a job if they have 99% of the skill set, whereas a man will apply for a job if they've got 70% of the skill set.
Yeah.
So we see so many disparities with men and women in the workplace as it is. And I think the importance with personal branding is not only does it help you feel more confident and you feel more like you're able and willing to step into a leadership role, but it also positions you from the external as someone who is in a leadership position. So we all know, if you think back to that person that you met at that networking event that was so well put together, and they were, on purpose, and they were, presenting powerfully, and they were communicating effectively, that person you immediately elevate above all the other people that you met at that networking event. And I know a lot of us think, oh, well, that person's just got that thing, they were taught how to dress as children, or they know how to communicate, or they know what their vision is. Well, a lot of this stuff is just a matter of sitting down and working on it. Like it's all trainable, it's all teachable, but it's often the last thing that we think about. This is a softer sort of skill. We all think, well, I need to go and learn how to sell or how to, do strategy or whatever it is. But we often forget that as a personal brand, we're the most important part. So we really need to work on focusing on developing ourselves as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. What kind of leader is it that you want to be, and how are you showing up, and how are you actually behaving in a way that aligns with those types of visions? So in terms of mindset, you mentioned you've got a mindset course as well. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about your philosophy on mindset.
So I fully believe that mindset is 80% of your success. So if you're, and we all spend 80% of our time on the action, and we spend 20% of our time on the mindset. But I know myself personally, when I really focus on my mindset and making sure that I'm working on putting out the best version of me, then that's when I get the best results reflected back. So when you're looking at leadership, stepping into a leadership role is often for women, what I find is that women have a lot of limiting beliefs and a lot of fears around being seen, fear of being heard. Imposter syndrome is a huge one for women. So that's where you have the internal critic in your head telling you, oh my God, everyone's going to find out that you're a fraud. So, you better not step into that leadership role because they're all going to find out that you don't have that, that degree or that whatever it is that we've told ourselves that we're limiting in. And so, understanding your mindset really is critical to stepping into a leadership position. And so, what I see with women predominantly in corporate is imposter syndrome. The other one that's really big is perfectionism. So perfectionism is where we, we think that we're striving to be our best, but actually it's a really shame-based activity. So Dr. Brene Brown, who's one of my idols, I worship Brene Brown.
We fangirl her too here. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm the biggest fan. So she describes perfectionism as self-destructive and addictive belief system. And it fuels the primary thought that if I look perfect and do everything perfectly, I can avoid or minimize the feelings of blame, judgment, and shame. So this is a huge one in the corporate world. And I know I used to be a proud perfectionist. Like I used to walk around going, yes, well, I'm a perfectionist. When they ask you in interviews and say, what's the worst trait about you? And I say, oh, well, I'm a perfectionist. And it's like, well, that is actually a shame-based.
That is actually your worst trait. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So working on those sort of things is just so important if you're trying to step into a leadership role, and also when you're trying to communicate to your team around you, and being aware of the different personalities that you have to deal with in every leadership position.
Yeah. And I can imagine if we just backtrack a little bit, starting out as a woman in civil engineering, there would have been around, I mean, you tell me, was there some limiting beliefs that you had around that industry, or was it difficult to, I guess, bond with other civil engineers within your team way back then?
Absolutely. I was the only girl. I mean, I was certainly the only woman under, say, 30. Like my mentor that I work, so I graduated at 21 and was working at 21 on construction site. And yeah, the next woman would have been the next female engineer would have been 30 years old, which when you're 21 does seem like,
Ancient, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Way
Yeah.
over the hill. And I was, I would have been 5 to 10 years younger than all of the men in my team for sure.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, I mean, I guess I was just such a ballsy little character back then. I was ready to paint the walls red and do whatever I needed to do to get the job done. I was that kind of person, wasn't quite so sensitive to all of this sort of thing. But it was, there was a lot of harassment and a lot of extremely, what would deem you'd be fired if you said any of the things that used to get said to me back in those days.
Yeah, time has certainly changed, that's for sure. So when you went from in the corporate world, working in civil engineering, and then shifting into having your own fashion label, how did you go with the adjustment? So I talk a lot around communication, and I can only imagine that communicating with civil engineers is going to be very different to communicating with people that are deciding what Paris Hilton's going to be wearing.
Communication was huge. And communication again is something that I'm not naturally gifted at. I'm a numbers person. So, I'm a super introvert. So I don't really like talking to people. I like to be by myself. I like to be crunching numbers. So for me, communication was it's a skill that I had to learn. And it was something that I've developed and I've practiced and I've rehearsed and I've put time and energy and effort into learning. So for anyone who's listening and going, yeah, well, I'm not great at communication, then learn it, go and do some courses, read some blogs, listen to podcasts around it. But certainly, that's one of the most important things that we see in the corporate world is learning styles. Some people are auditory, some people are kinesthetic, some people are read, write, visual. So if you're in a leadership position and you're trying to effectively communicate, well, you need to figure out who you're communicating to. So for instance, for me, if I'm very visual. So if you try and tell me, if you're trying to tell me how to get to your house, if you ring me up on a phone and say, turn left here and turn right there and turn here, I've completely tuned out. But if you draw a map, cool, I can follow that map super easily. And the people that you're leading in your team all have different learning styles as well. So, becoming really aware of each of their learning styles and communicating to them in that particular learning style. And as a leader, you're going to need to change your communication style with each team member.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly the role of the leader is around actually recognizing what those individual styles are, and that's your responsibility. So comms always comes from, if you're the one that's delivering the message, then that's when the responsibility is, as opposed to the receiving end. I love that so much. What I imagine you would have, you mentioned you've got 4 online courses, but all 4 of them are six-figure online courses, which of course means that there's probably quite a bit going on in the back end. Let's talk about productivity. There's a lot of people doing it tough right now, trying to juggle work and homeschooling and goodness knows what else in this crazy world of work-life balance. Hit me with your productivity tips.
I love talking about productivity. I describe myself as a productivity ninja. I honestly believe I get more done in a week than most people would in a month. And that's
Awesome.
not because certainly not because I'm working harder than everyone. I did do that for my first 2 businesses, but in this business, I've figured out a way to get into flow so that I'm not working, I don't work evenings, I don't work weekends. These days I'm working about 4 hours a week. 4 hours a day. But at the end of the week, I also don't feel like I'm exhausted. And again, that's what I did wrong in my first 2 businesses. So I'm not out here saying I've always gotten it right. It took me a long time to figure out what works for me so that I can get to the end of the week and feel like I've been in flow for the week. So what I've done is developed sort of like a practice that I just kind of figured it out because, I would do things on a certain day and certain things would feel extremely draining on some days, but on another day they'd be super easy. So for instance, Ali, what you and I are doing today, I could not have this conversation with you on a Monday. On a Monday, I am extremely introverted. I do not want to speak to anyone. And I feel like just ticking boxes. You know, I want to do super admin-y stuff. I want to write to-do lists. I want to plan my calendar. I want to clear my inbox, and I want to feel like I've ticked 100 boxes. That feels like what I want to do on a Monday. If I want to do that today, I don't want to tick boxes today. I want to talk to people. I want to have conversations. I want to have meetings, all those kind of things. Yep. So what I did to figure all of this out is I got just a piece of paper, and I wrote Monday through Friday at the top. And each day I would map out what tasks I was doing, and what felt like I was in flow. So sometimes I would take a meeting on a Monday, and that meeting on the Monday was just, I was like, oh my God, I don't want to speak to you today. I want to speak to you, on Friday. And so I soon realized that there was a flow to my week, and it was pretty standard every single week. On Mondays was admin. Tuesdays, I like to do data. So I like really getting heavy into analytics and crunching numbers and running ads. Wednesdays and Thursdays, I like creating. So I love building new courses, creating content, doing blogs and vlogs and YouTube stuff. And on Fridays, I love doing this sort of thing, showing up live. I do all of my live streams on Friday. And I've literally just mapped that out myself by analyzing where I'm feeling each day, what feels like I'm in flow throughout the week.
Yeah. And choosing your own adventure a little bit there as well, throwing out any of those rule books around, you have to do this in the morning and you need to do this in the afternoon of every single day. Do what works for you and go with the flow. I love it.
And obviously your people have a slightly more structured life, but I have done corporate a couple of times. What I also, the other tip that I have for corporates is, and I know this isn't always easy because let's face it, you have to go to meetings, but I always just found meetings to be such a time waste. Like I remember one of the companies that I worked for, he used to schedule an 8 a.m. Monday meeting and a 4 p.m. Friday meeting. He was just that kind of guy. And then it was just a litany of meetings throughout the week. And I just swore to myself then and there that I would never do that to someone. And I would always be super conscious of, if we've scheduled a 1 hour meeting that needs to be a 15-minute meeting, let's schedule a 15-minute meeting and let's get out the door. Let's not, hang around and do all that sort of thing. And I realize, if you're in a position that isn't always, available to you, but perhaps just, again, what you're saying there about breaking the rules, maybe have a look at what's flexible within your own environment. Does that need to be a 1 hour meeting? Can that be a 15-minute meeting, or can it just be an email? Figuring out saying no to, people that are looking to take time away from your own diary. Like I'm very protective of my diary.
And what's productive. And I think I might have seen a meme probably early on when everyone was adapting to Zoom, and it was something along the lines of, nothing like a pandemic to make you realize how many meetings could have been an email, which is so true. We do spend a lot of time wasting a lot of time.
Yeah.
So you have got a book out. Tell me about that.
So Dream Life, the book, is the Boss Babe's Guide to Turning Your Online Business Dream into a Reality. So it follows my DREAM, DREAM acronym. So D is define, which is all about mindset. So a lot of the stuff we talked about today, resilience versus failure, mindfulness versus over-identification. We develop self-judgment. We develop self-compassion over judgment. So lots of great mindset stuff in there. R is rarify, which is where we find your unique superpowers and make you more rare than a diamond. And this is your genius zone, personal branding, all that kind of good stuff. E is estate. So in the offline world, we get taught to go and buy an estate to create wealth, but in the online world, we build our own estate. So this is where we build our estate content. So our e-course or our ebook or any other online digital content that our asset. A is automation. I'm all about the funnels. I love that evergreen automated, make money in your sleep life. So that's what we have in A. And M is magnetize. So once we've built our foundations, then we go out and magnetize our traffic to us. So that's things like publicity, content marketing, all that kind of good stuff. Yeah. So it's a great book for anyone that's even thinking about getting into it. The reason I was compelled to teach this, it's sort of a conglomeration of all of my courses, but I had a few students going, this whole online thing is so, overwhelming. I wish someone would just write a handbook. And I was like, well, yeah, I could do that.
Here's a novel idea. And where can people find your book, your Dream Life book?
If you go to amber.courses, there's a whole bunch of, you can find the book, and then there's a whole bunch of 1 hour free corporate training, corporate and entrepreneurial training programs. There's a corporate class on that link that we have the commissioner, one of the commissioners of Queensland, talking about how he leads his team, the leadership skills that he's looking for when he's looking to promote people, as well as just a really interesting conversation about someone who's managed to get into one of the most senior government positions. So it's a really great masterclass. Your audience would love it.
Very good. I'll add the links in to the show notes for that. So are there any other exciting, I know you've got quite a bit going on. You've got online courses, you've got your book coming out. What other exciting things have you got in the works?
Well, Ali, I don't know if you're a reality TV fan, but I'm sure some of your audience are. So I have a reality TV show that's airing in America at the moment. So that show is called Dream Life, hence the book.
Yes.
And Dream Life follows the lives of myself and my business partner as we create our new online learning academy called the Love Academy. And so the show basically is a reality show documenting us, trying to make it in LA, and our cast and crew that are all sort of doing the same kind of thing. So it's a little bit of fun, and it's currently airing in America, but we've just found out it's airing on a streaming service in Australia very soon. So when that happens, we'll have a big launch party and we can all watch it together, Gogglebox style, and like chat about what's happening on the show. So
very good. So how far away is that from streaming in Australia? I assume it's top secret that you can't mention it.
September.
Oh, really close. Okay,
yeah.
Very cool. So we're recording this in late August. So hopefully by the time... Okay, so before we go too much further, I'd love to hear from you your 5 top tips for up and coming leaders, or even what you could tell baby Amber way back then around what your 5 tips would be.
I think tip number 1 would be develop self-awareness. So it's pretty hard to be a thoughtful and impactful leader if you're not aware of how you're showing up in the corporate environment, and even showing up, in the whole environment, whether you're having one-on-ones or whether you're leading a team. So developing self-awareness around what kind of leader you are, and if you're not the kind of leader you want to be, then figuring out how to become that sort of leader. And so the way that we teach this in the Path to Promotion is, asking your team a series of questions around what kind of leader would you describe me as? Do you think that I'm whatever you're hoping to be? And if they give you that feedback that yes, you are that type of leader, then great. But if they don't give you that feedback, then you've got a little bit of work to do. So that would be my first tip: develop self-awareness.
Very good. And number 2.
Number two, I feel like in a leadership role, you need resilience. And this is in any position, like especially, I lead a small company here, and my whole, as I often say, entrepreneurship, as in most business, is just putting out fires. So you need to get really good at being resilient and being open to, again, sort of a mindfulness thing, assessing how you view your failures. Are you viewing them through a lens of this has gone bad, I'm going to have a meltdown, or are you viewing them through a lens of this didn't work, I'm going to pivot, or I'm going to try something else, or I'm going to, lead over this way instead. So developing resilience, I actually think resilience is the number 1 skill or value that anyone needs to develop in this lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially right now. For sure, resilience and the ability to bounce back. Mm-hmm. And number 3?
Number 3, I would say figure out the learning styles, as we spoke about already, of both yourself and your team, and make sure that you're communicating to your team in the way that they're able to hear you.
Oh, good. I love that one. Number 4?
This one, I feel like women are going to be better at this, but this is, let's say it's for the men, but figuring out how to be an effective listener. I see that most people do a lot of speaking, especially in leadership roles. They do a lot of speaking and not a lot of listening. So I would say if you are guilty of that, and my business partner in the Path to Promotion is a speaker, she's not a great listener, and she's very aware of that. She knows that she needs to listen more. So, figuring out if you are that type of personality. Typically it's extroverts are really good speakers and not great at listening, and introverts typically are better listeners and not great at speaking. So if you are, in order to be an effective leader, you need to be able to listen to what your people are actually telling you. So develop that skill as well.
And lucky last?
Lucky last. I think, you know what? Well, this is what I teach everyone in my audience, and certainly something that it took me 2 full businesses to figure out. So the fashion business, I hadn't figured it out then. The styling business, it didn't exist. And in this business, the reason that I was so successful straight off the bat is because I implemented this strategy. So this strategy is find someone who's already done the things that you want to achieve, download all of their knowledge, wisdom, and insight into your brand, your business, your career development plan, and save yourself the blood, sweat, and tears. So back when I was a fashion stylist, that didn't exist. You couldn't do a fashion styling course, unless you wanted to go to uni for 3 years. You couldn't go and easily watch blogs and watch YouTube channels and listen to podcasts. You couldn't find a mentor easily. These days, with the advent of online learning, that kind of thing is so abundant that you can, if you want to advance your career, go and find a career development coach or a course, or, start reading books and blogs about it and just really upskill yourself rather than blood, sweat, and tearsing it, which is what I did for my first 2 businesses.
Blood, sweat, and tearsing it. I love that. And I think that's so true. The information, we are in an information age and it is available. So if there is something that you are looking to upskill and you don't know where to find it, there's this little thing called Google, which is helping people around the globe find answers to their questions. I have absolutely loved this. Thank you so much for sharing all your time and wisdom and knowledge and energy here today, Amber. And if people wanted to find out and follow you around, where do you normally hang out online?
I do a weekly chat show every week on Instagram called Wine Time. It happens at 4 p.m. on a Friday. Ladies, come and join me. We drink wine. We talk about all the things that we just spoke about today in more detail. And if you found me on Ali's podcast, please let me know that you found me on Ali's podcast. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn, come and connect. If you just search Amber Renee, you can find me there as well.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. It is actually Friday afternoon while we're recording this, so you'll be just about ready for wine time indeed. But thank you so much, Amber. I've really enjoyed our chat today.
Thanks so much, Ali.